This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at AFR.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at AFA.net.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. We've been talking over the last several days about the Second Amendment. We're going to revisit some Second Amendment issues today as the program develops. I want to welcome to our decision maker line someone to help us sort through some of the issues around gun rights, guns, and the Second Amendment. Dan Wos is his name. He's the author of a brand new book, which I'm holding right here in my never-before nicotine-stained fingers, called Good Gun, Bad Guy. Good Gun, Bad Guy. Dan Wos, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hey, Brian, thanks so much for having me.
Good to have you on. And just a quick update on the Second Amendment front, Dan. Maybe you've seen this, but gun shop owners are reporting that AR-15s are flying off the shelves since the Orlando massacre, even though it wasn't an AR-15 that was used. It was a 6-hour. And you know who's buying guns like they're going out of style? Gays and lesbians, because they realize they're as vulnerable as everybody else, and we believe in their Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms in their own defense. In fact, we believe in the right of gays and lesbians to protect themselves from personal violence. We believe in that more than the Democrats and the liberals do. Anyway, Dan, welcome to the program, and tell us a little bit about your book, Good Gun, Bad Guy. What's the deal here?
Well, the deal is I got tired of watching anti-gun politicians and some media use every tactic and tool possible to vilify guns and gun owners, and it only to push, a corrupt agenda. So I noticed the most important thing that I started to really notice was that the focus was always on the gun and never the bad guy. So I'm asking myself, well, what about the bad guy? Because like you're talking about here, it's not a gun that does it. If it wasn't for the bad guy, the gun would just kind of lay there. So, and the thing about this whole thing that's so crazy, and it defeats all logical thinking, is that the gun restrictions do nothing to solve the problem of human violence. They only empower the bad guys and make good people vulnerable.
And Dan, you were. What's intriguing about this book is you started out. You actually went through kind of a migration in your life. Your father used guns. You were around guns when you were a kid. You weren't afraid of guns or anything like that. Then you got into a mindset where you became an anti-gunner. Now you're back as a supporter of the Second Amendment. So you've sort of been on both sides of this divide. So talk to us about what you observed, what you learned about the mentality that goes on in the mind of anti-gunners. That's the expression you use. What motivates them? What drives them? What's in their mindset and their worldview about guns?
Well, let me start by saying, yes, I went from pro-gun family. My father died when I was about 24. I somehow went anti-gun, got caught up in the narrative and the rhetoric and all the propaganda. But eventually, I came back out and started to look at it with more of a logical mindset. And I now have a healthy understanding of why it's important to protect ourselves. And a healthy pro-gun stance. What's a big part of the problem with the anti-gunners is that they've been programmed. And a lot of this stuff, it starts with our beliefs. And what I've learned is that if, our beliefs are created from our childhood, our parents, our teachers, our politicians, the TV shows we watch. Those beliefs influence our thoughts. And our thoughts influence our daily activities, our actions, our choices. What's happening is anti-gunners have been programmed to believe that guns are the root of all evil in this world. They're dangerous, and we should be very scared of them. Now, and this is the sad part about the whole thing. Now, in the book, Good Gun, Bad Guy, I profile anti-gunners into two groups, and this is important. There are two. The first group is the anti-gunner. Now, the anti-gunner is typically someone who's fearful of guns. They don't have any real experience. They're scared of guns, and they don't necessarily want our rights to go away, but they would be happy if guns just kind of magically disappeared off the face of the planet. They have been misled by the anti-gun media. Now, then we have the anti-Second Amendment radicals. Now, they may have a lot of the same characteristics as the anti-gunner, but they do want our rights taken away, and they use every strategy and tactic possible, and they fight very hard every day to make that happen. They're the ones that would be cheering in the streets should the Second Amendment be repealed.
You know, and I was struck, Dan, reading through the early part of your book by the number of times that you use the word fear to describe that first group. These are the anti-gunners. They're not really radicals. They're not committed to abolishing or ignoring or shredding the Second Amendment, but they're just afraid of guns. It was kind of striking to me how much that figures into the mindset, at least of a lot of people, on the other side of this issue.
Fear seems to be our strongest human motivator, and anti-gun radicals have figured out a way to capture people, and they use fear. You know, it's a terrible tactic to use, but you see it all the time in marketing. You know, I tell in the book, you know, there's that insurance commercial, the tree falls on the car. Well, now you're led to believe, well, a tree could fall on my car too. I better get this insurance, so I'm safe. And once I feel safe, the fear is gone. Now, here's another thing, and I would love to, I'd like to share this analogy. Let's say we take an anti-gunner, a fearful, angry anti-gunner, and we bring him to the range. We teach them all the safety standards, all the procedures. They shoot, they have a great time, they do pretty well, they leave with a smile on their face. At that point, what does that do to their level of fear of guns? And what does that do to their level of anger toward gun owners? Once they get that experience, once they get the data and they understand, the fear goes away and the anger goes away, because they need the fear to justify the anger. This is why they keep each other ignorant, and they keep each other fearful, and they keep themselves fearful. That's why they don't want to understand. You see, anti-gunners like their position. They don't want to change. They like the fight.
You know, and this interest is this conditioning to be afraid of guns. We had this experience my wife and I did not too long ago, where we had some guests in our home, and for some reason guns came up, and both my wife and I, we have concealed carry permits, and we do what that permit allows you to do for our own protection. And so we just wanted to kind of show them what we use for our own self-defense, and it wigged them out. They just got spooked, you know, they just got spooked when we just pulled them out in the holster we have for them, just to show it to them. So that they're so conditioned to be afraid of something, which is an inanimate tool, that if it's handled responsibly, it only represents a threat to people that intend us harm. But it was kind of a snapshot into how many people are just kind of wigged out, again, by the rhetoric that's out there on the left and in the media.
Well, marketing and propaganda are very powerful, and anti-gun politicians and the anti-gun media, they know this. Here's an example. If I said, I'm loving it, what do you think of? You know, what company do you think of? If I said, just do it, what do you think of? Well, you'd probably say, well, I'm thinking of McDonald's, or I'm thinking of Nike. Marketing companies know how to program people, and they know that through repetition, they can convince people of anything. You know, we can be convinced of anything through repetition, or we can be convinced through anything through, let's say, a traumatic event. You know, you might have a song that you hear, and maybe it reminds you of when you were a kid. Well, maybe at that moment when you first heard that song, you were in a heightened emotion. You know, maybe you were having a great time, you know, playing with Hot Wheels in the sand. I don't know. But when you hear that song now, 30, 40 years later, you get that feeling again. Things get anchored into our brains. And if we can't have that instant heightened emotional anchor, we can have it through repetition. Marketing companies understand this.
Dan, I'm talking here with Dan Wos, author of a brand new book, which I recommend, Good Gun, Bad Guy. And we'll have you, Dan, in a moment tell us how people can get their hands on a copy. But I want to ask you to react to this. You might have seen this. This is a journalist for the New York Daily News by the name of Gersh Kuntzman. This guy couldn't fathom why anybody would want to own an AR-15. So he went to a gun shop in Philadelphia, and he shot a firearm in a safe setting, indoor range. And here were the results. I'm quoting him now. The recoil bruised my shoulder. The brass shell casing disoriented me as they flew past my face. The explosions, loud like a bomb, gave me a temporary case of PTSD. I was anxious and irritable. So this guy fires one round of an AR-15, and he is like traumatized for life. You know, and my wife is 5 foot tall. I've got video of her shooting an AR-15, had never shot one before. She squeezes off the first round. It's kind of a jolt. It's loud, and you can see it startled her a little bit. And the next reaction is, man, this is cool. This is fun. I'm going to squeeze the trigger again. So your reaction to Gersh Kuntzman?
Well, my reaction is, well, there was also a little 7-year-old girl or 8-year-old girl that shot an AR-15, and she loved it. So the way I look at that thing, I think that may have been a propaganda piece, because his words were designed to create an internal representation in people's minds. Bomb, anxious, bruised, whatever. I can't remember all the exact words that you just used.
PTSD. He wants to get that word in people's minds.
You see, that's the thing. They want to put that fear out, and they want to make it as animated as possible so we can envision it. See, that stuff changes the way we think, the way we envision things. It changes our internal representation. It's for the same reason that they use the term Wild West. The term Wild West that you'll hear anti-gunners using all the time is designed so you are fearful because there might be a shootout in the produce section.
Yeah, they think that every day there's going to be some standoff in Main Street. Well, Dan, we are out of time. Dan is the author of a brand new book, Good Gun, Bad Guy. Tell us, Dan, how people can get their hands on a copy.
You can go to goodgunbadguy.com or .net, whichever you prefer. Good Gun, Bad Guy. Or you can just search it on Amazon.
And the author's name is Dan Wos. That's W-O-S, rhymes with cross. Well, Dan, thank you for being with us. Appreciate it. Good book. Best of luck to you, and God's best over you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Brian. Appreciate it.
You bet. We'll be right back with your phone call. Stay with us. Focal Point, American Family Radio.